All right, so we're diving deep today into something that's been making a lot of waves, um, especially here in LA, in our own backyard.
Right.
The LAUSD inclusion model
Yes.
and how it's really working or,
Yeah.
maybe not working
Right.
for students with disabilities.
Absolutely.
And we've got a ton of research, different viewpoints, perspectives.
There's a lot to unpack.
We really want to unpack all this.
Yeah.
So just to set the stage,
Sure.
inclusion. When we talk about inclusion in this context,
Yeah.
it basically means we're integrating these students into general education classrooms
Right.
rather than keeping them separate in specialized programs, which was,
Yeah, the older model.
yeah, the kind of the way it was done for
a long time.
a long time.
Yeah.
And so, there's obviously
Still a big
a
debate.
huge debate
Huge.
about whether this is actually the right approach
Right. Right.
for every
For
student.
everyone. Yeah.
And so to kick us off,
Yeah.
I think it would be really helpful if you could kind of explain, what's the big push behind this?
Yeah. So I think what's really fascinating about inclusion is that it's not just this warm and fuzzy feel good idea,
Right.
right? We want to make sure everyone's included and
Everyone feels good.
everyone's happy. There's actually a lot of research
Yeah.
that backs up the benefits of it.
Interesting.
So there was a study a few years ago, 2020, by the University of Kansas,
Okay.
and they found that students with disabilities who were in inclusive classrooms actually showed a 15% increase in their reading comprehension
Yeah.
compared to those who are in segregated settings.
So that's
Pretty significant.
that's a huge difference.
Yeah, so there's real evidence there that inclusion can actually boost academic performance.
So it's not just about the social good.
Right.
It's also about making sure that these students have the best chance
Exactly.
to really learn and grow.
Yeah, when they're in the general ed classroom,
Yeah.
they're exposed to the same curriculum, they're held to the same standards,
Right.
and that can really challenge them
And push them.
to reach their full potential.
Yeah. And then, I guess there's also the social and behavioral side of things.
Absolutely.
Which is a huge piece of this.
Huge piece. Think about it. Diverse friendships,
Right.
Yeah.
improved communication skills, having those positive role models. Those are all benefits that we want for all students.
Of course.
But they can be especially impactful
Yeah.
for students with disability. Just imagine a student with autism, for example, who might struggle with social interaction.
Right.
Being in that inclusive classroom
Yeah.
gives them the opportunity to practice those skills in a natural setting.
Yeah, absolutely. Real world.
Every day. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And what about the long term? That's something that,
Long-term implications. Yeah.
I think about a lot.
Yeah.
What happens after these students graduate?
Right. And that's where the research gets really interesting because studies have actually linked inclusion
Okay.
to better post-secondary outcomes, which means things like going to college, getting jobs, being able to live independently.
Yeah.
These are the goals we have, right?
Right. For all students.
For all students. And inclusion seems to really set them on a path
To achieve that.
towards achieving those goals.
So, hearing all this, it sounds like...
This sounds great. Yeah, like a win-win.
Yeah, like a win-win.
But I know,
Yeah.
and from the research that you sent me,
Yeah.
there are some serious concerns about how inclusion is actually being implemented.
Right.
Particularly here in LAUSD.
Yeah.
We've got reports of frustration from teachers, from parents,
Students even.
from students
Yeah.
themselves. So
Yeah.
what's at the heart of that tension?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues is resources.
Right. The ideal of inclusion requires a lot of support.
Right.
You need trained staff. You need specialized environments when necessary.
Right.
Even smaller class sizes, ideally.
Right.
But the question is, are those things actually in place?
Right.
And I think that's where, the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it seems like LAUSD is falling short in some areas.
Yeah, and I think our sources definitely highlighted that. And there's a real worry that some students who are actually thriving
Right.
in those specialized programs,
Yeah.
those separate classrooms, with teachers who are specifically trained to meet those really specific needs,
Absolutely.
might now be struggling because those supports have been scaled back
Right.
in this big push for full inclusion.
And that brings up a really critical question
Yeah.
of equity, right?
Right.
Are we truly serving the individual needs of all students?
Right.
Or are we just pushing this one-size-fits-all approach that might actually harm some?
Yeah.
So, for example, you might have a student with a really severe learning disability
Okay.
who needs much more intensive,
Right.
individualized support
Yeah.
than a general education classroom can realistically provide.
And on top of that,
Yeah.
we can't forget about the teachers
The teachers, yeah.
who are dealing with this every day.
On the front lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, are they getting the training?
Right.
Are they getting the resources they need?
To support all these different needs.
Yeah, to be able to effectively support students with such a wide range of needs.
Absolutely. And, every student with a disability has an IEP.
Right.
An individualized education program.
Yes.
That outlines their specific needs and accommodations. And so successful inclusion requires teachers to be familiar with those IEPs
Yeah.
and adapt their instruction accordingly.
That's a lot.
Which is a huge challenge without the proper training and support.
It sounds like there's this risk, right?
There is.
Of a really good idea
Mm-hmm.
being executed poorly
Yes.
and then ultimately hurting
The student, it's meant to help.
the very student.
Yeah, exactly.
It's trying to help.
Yeah, so it's really important to have these honest conversations
Right.
about both the benefits
Right.
and the challenges of inclusion.
Yeah.
I think we can't just assume
Right.
that putting all students in the same classroom
Right.
is going to magically solve everything.
Yeah, it's not a quick fix.
No, it takes careful planning,
Mm-hmm.
adequate resources,
Right.
and a genuine commitment to meeting those individual needs.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think
We've explored.
we've looked at the potential,
Yeah.
the incredible potential of inclusion,
Mhm.
but also the very real challenges
Yeah.
of making it work.
It's complex.
It's a complex issue, yeah.
There's no easy answers.
No easy answers, no. And I think a key takeaway here is that successful inclusion can't be a cookie-cutter approach.
Right.
It requires a deep understanding of each student's unique needs
Yeah.
and a willingness to provide the appropriate level of support.
Right.
And that might be in a general education classroom. It
Yeah.
might be a specialized program.
Right.
It might be a combination of both.
And that really leaves you with this,
Right.
what would true equitable inclusion
Right.
look like here in LAUSD?
Yeah.
How can we make sure that it benefits all students?
No.
Not just some.
Exactly.
And so keep exploring, keep asking those questions.
Keep digging.
Maybe you'll be part of finding the answers.
Yeah.
That's what we all need.
It's an ongoing conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.